name is Bill Burkett. I'm the superintendent of schools here in Situate. It's my 4th year here. I'm loving it. I'm loving the opportunity tonight to share with you my excitement over the new Cushing Hatherly building project, but also just to share with you as much information as we can gleaned over the last 9 public meetings, multiple other smaller meetings, getting feedback, revisioning with community members, teachers, students, staff, all combined into tonight. And also we have on our website at cit.org, scit.org, there's a page right on there that has all this information we'll talk about tonight, has all the prior meeting information, and a lot of good information if you want to take your time and look at that. Also, I want to make myself available, after tonight, if questions come up after tonight, and think about things, the town meeting's not till April 29th, so certainly a lot can happen between now and then. And I don't want this to be the last opportunity for folks to be able to get their questions answered, or concerns shared, or feedback in any way. We want to make sure when we go into town meeting on the 29th, and then before the May 18th vote, that everyone that wanted to or wants to be informed was informed, right? Got their questions answered. So that's what tonight's goal is. We're going to start with a video. After I do introductions of some of the members of the school building committee, you can certainly reach out to those members if you recognize somebody that we introduced tonight with any questions as well. And as we present tonight, if you have a question, when we go through the slides, pretty lengthy presentation, just raise your hand or yell out, and we'll slow down. We'll try to do that after each slide anyways to pause and ask for any questions you might have. And then we'll also stick around afterwards for those folks that might have individual questions that they want to ask. Yes?
Just wondering, how long have you been here? And mine is in Situate.
How long have I personally?
Yes.
4 years.
4 years.
All right. So let's do some introductions. I'll start to my left.
Hi, Tom Hazelberg, I'm the project manager with the video architect.
Nancy Walls, the town finance director, town accountant.
Hi, I'm Nicole Brandolini. I'm the school committee chair and school building committee chair, and mother of 2 Cushing students in 2nd and 3rd grade, as well as a GATE student and a high school student. And my husband is a Cushinger too.
I am Jared Kelly. I'm a member of the advisory committee and the school building committee.
I'm a town resident and a citizen on the school building committee.
Tom Repp, the director of business and finance with the schools.
Chris Matalo, Director of Facilities for the schools.
Scott Williams, Principal of Cushing Elementary School.
Julie Ward, director of supplemental services, part of the building committee.
I'm Janice Lindblom, graduate of Wampatuck Schools, Situate High School, Old Gates. 3 students, 1 graduate, 2 high school students, 1 graduate this year. And I'm on the school building committee and school committee.
John from Vertex, we're the owner's project manager for the town. We were also the owner's project manager for this great building, as well as the public safety building.
Steve Thyron, I work with John at Vertex.
Hi everyone, I'm Don Walter, principal with Dornbury Architects. We also do the Gates Middle School project and the public safety project. And as of this day, I've lived in Situate 32 years and my 2 children go through the Situate Public Schools.
Christine Sheehan, I'm the principal of Hatherly School. I've also lived in Situate for 23 years, and my 3 kids went to Cushing.
All right, we're going to start with the video and then we'll begin the presentation.
Situate Public Schools embarked on the MSBA process in May 2020 to evaluate the needs of the aging elementary schools in our district. After exhaustive work by our community, we proposed a new elementary school be built to consolidate Cushing and Hatherly schools and provide more capacity for pre-K. The Massachusetts School Building Authority accepted our proposal. MSBA is a state agency that accepts a limited number of applications through a highly competitive process each year to provide grants for the construction and renovation of public schools. By entering this process, Scituate stands to receive up to $35.8 million in state money to help pay for the new school's construction. That money reduces the cost to Scituate's taxpayers. For the past 16 months, we've updated our community on the feasibility study, preliminary design, and schematics of our plan. We're now at the project scope and budget approval phase of this project. In this video, we'll explain why our district needs to construct a new elementary school. We'll share how the proposed design of the new elementary school meets these needs. We'll lay out our plan for consolidating the two schools in a way that's least disruptive to our community and our students. We will provide detailed numbers on what the project will cost, what Scituate's share of the expense is, how we plan to finance this expense, and the impact it will have on our tax assessments. And we will explain what a yes and no vote mean for the project, which our district will present to our town's voters for approval at a special town meeting on April 29th and on the town election ballot on May 18th. Our district leaders sought MSBA funding for a new elementary school because both Hatherly and Cushing have reached the end of their useful lives. Here's how. Hatherly, opened in 1962, was identified by the MSBA as having the greatest needs of any of the elementary schools. Cushing is just 2 years younger, opened in 1964. They both have deficient site conditions with poor pavement, vehicle circulation, and drainage, deteriorating exteriors, including poor insulation, rotting windows, and leaky roofs, decaying 20-year-old modular classrooms which were meant to be temporary solutions, and aging interiors that are not fully accessible. Both schools would require total replacement or significant upgrades to basic systems like heating, ventilation, and electrical to remain in operation. Even with upgrades and repairs, neither Cushing nor Hatherly have the capacity to deliver the type of programming that grants our children an excellent educational experience for the next 60 years. That's central to how we've designed a single new school. We started with community input, an intensive visioning process with community members, parents, students, administrators, and teachers to imagine an innovative design that includes varied and flexible learning environments and avoids the antiquated one-size-fits-all model. This will serve a multi-tiered system of supports and students with diverse and individual needs. We stayed true to our strategic plan, creating a universal design for learning in our physical space with traditional classroom spaces and flexible breakout spaces. We also designed with the entire community in mind. A fully accessible space zoned into private and public spaces, improved Flannery Field, substantial gym space, and fully accessible playground, all with easy access and ample parking. We tied the indoor and outdoor spaces together with connections into 2 courtyards that will be used for developmentally appropriate learning. And we prioritized safety and our footprint on the neighborhood with separate secure entrances for pre-K and the elementary school, private and public zones in the building, and a traffic flow that will reduce impact in the surrounding neighborhood. By constructing a single new elementary school for 460 Cushing and Hatherly students and new space for 100 pre-K students, Scituate can take 2 aging buildings offline. Our goal to consolidate and redistrict 2 schools will be to smoothly acclimate children, families, teachers, and staff to the new building with minimal disruption. Here are the guiding principles we will follow while consolidating and redistricting Scituate for a new elementary school. We commit to an inclusive process, providing an opportunity for every voice to be heard through a series of community conversations about the redistricting process. Our goal is to minimize the social and emotional impact on our children, prioritizing keeping families together at one school. Should voters approve the plan to build a new elementary school, the discussion of the redistricting process will take place as early as fall 2024 to prepare for the opening of the school in fall 2027. Here's the project scope and budget for a new elementary school under the MSBA process. The total project budget is $119.4 million. This includes careful contingency planning for rising costs, demolition of the Cushing School, and infrastructure improvements. The MSBA would contribute up to $35.8 million to this budget, leaving about $83.6 million for Scituate to finance. You'll see that this number is very close to the cost that was estimated by our design team at the preferred schematic phase of this process last October. Here's how we propose to pay for it. A 25-year bond structured in a manner to save millions of dollars of interest over the life of repayment by paying equal amounts of principal each year. Using a conservative interest rate of 4.75%, that amounts to $866 of additional property taxes in the first year of repayment on a $921,000 home, the average single-family assessed home in Scituate. By year 25 of repayment, that tax impact has declined to $414 of additional taxes on the same valued home. We're presenting this financing to voters as a debt exclusion, meaning the tax increase is temporary. The tax amount declines each year and expires when the bond is repaid. This project's scope and budget now requires action by voters. This will take place on 2 key dates. At a special town meeting on April 29th, the project requires a 2/3 majority of town meeting attendees to approve. The project also appears as a ballot question at the town's election on May 18th and requires a simple majority of voters to move forward. The project must achieve a positive result at both the special town meeting and the ballot in order to move forward. If voters approve the project in the town election, the MSBA project team would move forward with final design of a new elementary school, then construction, with the goal of cutting the ribbon and occupying the new school in fall of 2027. If voters do not approve the project, Scituate Public Schools will need to address the repair and improvement of Cushing and Hatherly elementary schools through its regular capital improvement process. The MSBA's involvement would cease, and any future MSBA involvement on a future project would require the filing of a new statement of interest by the town. The cost of maintaining these 2 buildings would continue to rise and would require Scituate to divert maintenance money from other buildings. Renovation of the existing buildings for mechanical systems, structural needs, and current accessibility code requirements has a number of differences from the current MSBA process. 100% of these expenses would likely have to be paid with local tax dollars, as the educational needs of the district are not being met by this method. We estimate these expenses at $62 million in 2024 dollars. But when forecast with inflation and price increases across the time period it would take to complete the renovations, we estimate the total expense to be $80.6 million. That's $3 million less than the contribution Scituate would make toward a new elementary school under MSBA. Renovation would also take significantly longer, as the improvements would have to be made in phases using modular space, which would disrupt student learning. Nor would it solve any of the critical education space challenges present in both buildings or add needed pre-K capacity. The MSBA process is challenging, but we believe is the best way to achieve our mission of inspiring, supporting, and challenging all learners to reach their unique potential. Please take a moment to review more of the design plans, project renderings, and budget numbers of this project in the MSBA section of the Scituate Public Schools website.
So that's just to provide you an overview. We're going to dive into that much deeper now, into each section of that. And as we start the presentation, please, like we said, raise your hand or just ask any questions out loud. We'll be happy to do our best to answer, okay? Here's the agenda for tonight. We've covered a little bit about this, but just to give you where we're going with this presentation. So the scheduling process, the project need, design supports education. We had stormwater planning for this presentation. The budget, obviously, and then our next steps.
Terrific. So you got to meet most of the team here tonight, but just want to give you an overview of how the whole team has been constructed and how it works. Obviously, we're working with the town of Scituate and the Scituate Public Schools through the school committee and a school building committee, which is made up of really a cross-section of the community. About 15 people sit on that committee as the owner representing the project. You see Vertex, Count and Steve are here tonight as the owner's project manager, have the direct relationship with the owner, as do we, as doing with your architects, all working together with the three-legged stool. But off to the left is a really important partner in all of this. That's the Massachusetts School Building Authority. MSBA you'll be hearing tonight, and that's a state-funded authority that is the group that finances their portion of the project that we talk about tonight when we say the town share versus what MSBA will be paying for. And the other thing that's really important about MSBA is they have a pretty prescribed process that we've been going through. And we'll show you what that looks like also, which helped lead us to where we are tonight, leading up to the votes. So just what is the project? For those who may not know, Hatherly and Cushing schools were deemed to have the greatest need of the 4 elementary schools in town. That's why MSBA has allowed the town to look at both of those as a consolidation. So as a consolidation, the grade K through 5 school is 460 students. But in addition to that, there's also a need for pre-kindergarten space within the town. As you know, there is space at the Wampatuck School, but there's a need for even more. So by considering this right in the beginning, pre-K space for up to 100 students, it actually would provide more space that is currently in the Wampatuck School, and it will relieve space in the Wampatuck School for other programs by moving it into the new Cushing Hatherly School. So, and I'll show you the process we went through, but just so everyone knows, after we went through a very rigorous visioning and planning process, the Hatherly site was deemed to be the most favorable. And then in terms of the schedule, the overall schedule, I think what's important here is Vertex and Norman Whittier were hired in 2022, and we're about 16 months into a 5-year process, but we want to look back also. This really started back in 2017 with an elementary school study, looking at all 4 elementary schools, and out of that study came an application to the MSBA by virtue of a statement of interest. Basically, you're submitting your interest in working with the MSBA on a project, and the first time it was submitted was not accepted, which is not unusual, quite frankly, because it's quite a competitive program. A lot of districts submit on an annual basis. So then in May of 2020, another statement of interest was submitted and was accepted, which then allowed the town to go into the eligibility phase, to form the building committee, to put the money together for the feasibility study and the schematic design work that we're doing now, and then ultimately to go through and get, as I mentioned, Vertex and Norman Whittier hired. And then we've gone, you can see the full schedule is the feasibility study, the schematic design, which we completed now, assuming favorable votes on April 29th and May 18th. We'll then go through the detailed design process to get the documents to a place where we can bid the project and then construct the project. So all told, the school will be occupied in fall of '27, and then there'll be some field and demolition work that will take place after that, which will move into the end of that year. So altogether, it's been a 10-month planning process. So quite a bit of time has been invested into these elementary schools. So getting a little more detailed, just so you can see what the feasibility study and schematic design program look like. We started with what's called a preliminary design program, and what takes place in there is we went through a rigorous visioning process, talking with staff, with students, with community members, and just determining what the town wanted to see in this school project. And out of that came all the educational spaces that made up the building that we've since designed. And in that phase, and I'll show you in a minute, there were 23 options that were looked at. So they range from just repairing the buildings to additions or renovations to all new. So all that was done in this PDP phase. And you can see all along the way also the green arrows. These are all the public meetings we had. This is number 9 that we're in tonight. So after that PDP submission, we actually went into what's called Preferred Schematic Report, PSR. So we took the 23 options and it got narrowed down to 6 options. So went through that similar process to PDP, took that to the MSBA for a board vote, and out of that came the one option that you'll see tonight, which is the preferred option that is going to be presented to the community. And as I mentioned, we finished schematic design. We're doing our final public meeting right now, and then we'll have the town votes on April 29th and on May 18th. So, here's the 23 options that we looked at. Yes, sir.
Just a question, what's the MSBA meeting on 4/24?
Oh, thank you. So that is the MSBA board approval of our schematic design. So we've been working with them all along throughout this process. In fact, we had a meeting a week and a half ago with them, and basically they wanted to make sure that we are lined up with their process, that we're meeting all of their expectations for our submissions. And every indication to date is that, yes, we have. They've given us our reimbursement rate, which John will talk about. So that really becomes, not functional, of course, because they have to go through a discussion, but as long as the staff is making the recommendation to the board, which we fully expect, that will be an approval of the project by MSBA to allow us to continue moving forward. Thank you. Oh, yes,
Does MSBA have a model school for elementary?
they do. In this case, we don't believe there are any model schools that meet the Hatherly Cushing enrollment model. And because of the site, the model school wouldn't fit anyway. When you look at the design that we have here, there are some restrictions on the site that we have to work with between the existing building being there, and then there are wetlands up in the northwest and southwest corners of the site. Yes.
Hopefully last one.
That's okay.
Is this an informational meeting or an input? If we make comments, can changes be made, or is this kind of?
I guess it depends on what kind of changes you make.
Okay, that's good to know.
Yeah.
Okay,
But yes, absolutely. We want to hear your feedback. And
great.
while we couldn't make changes leading up to the schematic design approval, we can certainly consider things moving forward.
Great, thank
So here are the 23 options that we looked at. They range from the top row where was the K through 5 enrollment. The bottom row was the pre-K, pre-kindergarten through 5 enrollment. And they range from, on the left, from repair only to additions or renovations and new construction in each case. And then through really a lot of discussion, we have developed a matrix working with the school building committee. These 6 options rose to the top. The repair only for Hatherly and Cushing, addition or renovation at Hatherly, new construction at Hatherly for K-5, and then the same thing for pre-K-5, addition or renovation, and then 2 new construction. It's important to note that the Cushing site was eliminated for a couple of reasons. One is it's a very challenging site. Anyone who's been out there, there's a plateau kind of where the school is located. Then the slope drops off pretty significantly down towards the high school into a wooded area. So the options that we looked at out there became more expensive to develop. And then the other thing is, if you think about where it's located, it's basically at the end of a dead-end road. So you'd only have one way in, one way out. We tried to look at another access point through the high school, but between all the field development and the wetlands that run between the fields and Route 3A, there really wasn't a feasible way to get another access point up to Cushing. So Hatherly became the focus with these 6 options. And repair only, which talked about in a little more detail down the road here, but the repair only has to be there as a marker. So what that means is it's generally the lowest cost option, but all it's doing is repairing the 2 buildings in this case. And when we say repairing the 2 buildings, it's replacing roofs, replacing windows, making the building handicap accessible, upgrading systems, replacing windows within the building. But it's not, in this case, not meeting the educational goals that are established in the vision. So all of the spaces that are in the building today would remain in the building, and presumably the modulars would stay too, or you'd buy new modulars to go in, because you're not making the building any bigger. So that was the repair only, and then the addition and renovation options, which were for the K through 5 and the pre-K through 5, you see here, pretty onerous on the population. As you can imagine, the existing building basically is right here, so we're trying to wrap new construction around that and then go back and do renovation to the existing building. Very expensive, very time-consuming, and very disruptive of the activities of school on a daily basis. And then we had two new options. The one in the lower right-hand corner, which we call the tee or bar option that you see here, and then the preferred option that you see up here, which really took on the shape of what the site allowed us to do. But what was really important was the development of these two courtyards. We visited a lot of schools with a working group with some of the SBC members, and what we learned was that they're exterior spaces, but they're interior confined within the building. They became safe spaces, they became extended learning spaces from the building looking back into them, and it became quiet play areas too. So ultimately, the school committee voted for pre-kindergarten to definitely go in the school. So you see option 18 is circled up there. That was pre-K through 5, new option that you see up here on the left. So that gives you a quick overview of the process we went through to get to where we are. If there's any questions on that before we continue forward? Yes.
In Massachusetts, kindergarten is not mandated, so why are we looking at pre-K?
Sure. You're correct, kindergarten's not mandated, pre-K is not mandated, but we have, our enrollment right now is busting at the seams for our pre-K. We've had a waiting list every year for the last several years for our preschool program, and we found that the students who are in pre-K are going to be more successful in kindergarten and first grade. But our pre-K program here is a special education focused pre-K, that's all the pre-K in Massachusetts. But we also have peers that are part of that as well, students who are regular education who are part of the program as well. And we found that they're more successful down the road. So because of the waiting list, we've expanded our pre-K up to capacity of up to 100 students. Basically going from 3 classrooms we have now to 5 in the new building.
Okay, thank you. For pre-K students who are the model students, do they pay tuition or
They do.
does the taxpayer pay?
No, they pay a tuition to be part of the program. Am I the next slide? Okay, there we go. Okay. So, a lot of people have asked, where did we get that 460 number from the K to 5? The MSBA looked at all 4 elementary schools, and they want to make sure that the town is maximizing the space in all of our elementary schools before they approve a new project. So they know that there's a little bit more space in Jenkins, and there's a little bit more space in Wampatuck. And they came up with 460 as the number that would work in a consolidated school for Cushing and Hatherly. But if you add it up, I mean, you can do the math. Right now, there's 368 students at Cushing, 250 students at Hatherly, for a total of 618. And so many people ask, why are we doing this? It seems like we're making this school a little bit smaller. They looked at our enrollment over the next 10 years, and even though we saw a little bit of a dip in enrollment in the past 3 to 5 years, that's changing. Our enrollment is actually stabilizing and going up a little bit over the next 10 years. And the 460 is what the MSBA calls a design enrollment. There are 24, I'm going to keep the math real simple. There's 24 K to 5 classrooms in the new building at 20 students in each classroom, which is what we want to see in our elementary classrooms. That's actually 480. So 24 times 20 is 480. So we can fit more than 460. So the capacity of the building is actually more than 460. And we're going to be working very closely, starting right in the fall, looking at who will be able to go to that new building and to be able to maximize as many people into the new building as we can. It can fit more than 460. It could fit, sure, 500 students into that building. But 460 is what they call the design enrollment. So we just want to be clear about that right up front. 460 is not a cap. It's a design enrollment. We can certainly go higher than that. And the pre-K, actually, we were just talking about the pre-K. So to be crystal clear, the 5 classrooms that we're putting in there is reimbursable by the MSBA. They will reimburse us for the space. The only thing they won't reimburse us for is the stuff inside the classroom. So the desks and the chairs and the technology inside the classroom, that we have to absorb, but they absolutely will reimburse us for the pre-K space. And as I said earlier, we've had wait lists for pre-K over the past several years. We continue to have those wait lists, and I'm confident that we'll be able to fill those classes to the 100 students that we're putting in there. Again, it also gives us that extra space that we're going to need. If we need an extra classroom here and there, we have it available for us for enrollment.
All right, we're going to talk about the project need now, which is a little bit like the leaky boat metaphor. So with apologies to the owner of the Sequest. So we identified some needs at the Hatherly and Cushing schools. We talked about this a little bit in the video, but just to kind of underscore, there are undersized or missing spaces in the building. Spaces that are not the appropriate size for what the educational need is, or spaces that are actually just not there that should be there. And most of those are special education spaces. When these buildings were built, special education wasn't really a thing that was designed into schools at that time. There wasn't a program, there weren't rooms, there weren't spaces. So the teachers and administrators have had to be very creative about how they kind of carve out space to accommodate those programs. There are also inappropriate spaces next to one another. There's a lot of noise trespass between some spaces and others. There's a complete lack of meeting space in these both buildings. There really isn't a significant conference room for adults to have meetings where they're not sitting in children's furniture to do that. The modulars, we talked about those are still in use. But the really kind of the big thing is the basic building systems are in need of replacement or significant upgrade. So between the two buildings, Hatherly was determined to have the greatest need, but really since they're twin schools, the needs are very similar. And we're going to have Scott come in and talk about some of these needs right now.
Good evening, my name is Scott Williams. I am the principal of the Cushing Elementary School. It's my privilege to present to you tonight some of the challenges that we are facing in our current physical plants. As we've demonstrated earlier, there is a clear need for some of the challenges that we have been presented with. We're not really meeting the needs of a state-of-the-art classroom for our students today. It's impacting learning and obviously our staff as well. So this first slide on the left, this picture, clearly there's some drainage challenges here. You can see the water is pooling. This will impact two things. It impacts our play areas and our fields for our students and our children. It saturates the local area. The drainage also affects, as you can see, the pooling is very close to the integrity of the structure of the building. So it impacts our children's playability as well as the integrity of the structure. On the right, pooling correlates to concrete damage, tar damage, crosswalk damage. I believe this is the entrance to the Hatherly School. And as you can see, there's cracking, deficiency in access. It correlates. The more pooling, the more impact it has on the local environment. This next slide shows these windows. They are one-pane windows. They lack robust thermal properties. They also do not attract natural light. Research and studies have proven that natural light is very productive for optimal learning for children. Exposure to the outdoors creates an enrichment experience for our children. You can see cracking, you can see damage on the casing of the windows. It really lacks, and also clearly there's lack of efficiency for energy conservation as well. On the right, this is obviously a flat roof. This membrane rubber roof, you can clearly see there's no pitch for water runoff, and we'll show you a slide in a moment which will show the secondary detriments of this format, because where water accumulates, it will affect the roof structure in the classrooms, impacting the learning environment. Also, this membrane roof does not mitigate noise. When it rains, it is loud, and it does generate and impact the learning environment for our students with their time on learning and their ability to attend. Thank you, Tom. This next slide, as you can see, this is one of our exhaust systems. Lots of algae, moisture, pooling, condensation, impacting the integrity of the brick structure on the left. Again, these things will, over time, greatly damage and compromise the building structure. On the right, we spoke about the temporary, I believe they've been there for about 25 years. These were added structures to our buildings. They've become permanent. Again, more evidence on the vinyl siding of algae accumulation. And of note would be this egress access exit point, which is not conducive for any children on wheelchairs or who need to access or exit the building, any children on crutches, less than ideal for our students. This next picture shows on the left, this is the Cushing hallway. This is our only way for our children who are on wheelchairs or need access to the upper elementary wing. This is where they would have an equitable experience for music, art, physical education. It's the only way that they can access those activities and opportunities. It breaks down frequently. It requires repair and servicing. The parts are challenging to order. They are expensive. And aside from the mechanical challenges, our students are really on display in front of their peers. It's cumbersome. There's not any privacy for these children. So again, it's really not an optimal opportunity. The picture on the right is a typical student bathroom at Cushing School. Again, revisiting our theme of equity and access. Our students who are in wheelchairs, there's nowhere for them to really wheel up and wash. There's no privacy. They cannot access these stalls. The only handicap accessible bathrooms we have in our schools are in the nurses' station, and that presents its own set of challenges. The picture on the left is a kindergarten classroom. Again, back to our theme of equity and access. Our students are not able to physically wheel up to wash their hands for sanitation. They're also not they really can't access any materials that are provisioned there for classroom instruction. This is in a kindergarten classroom. You can see that the cabinets are damaged, they're falling apart. Again, not the best situation. On the right, this is the Hatherly stage where, thank you to our PTOs because they do offer us enrichment opportunities. We have many theatrical presentations and guest speakers throughout the year. Again, it's an equity, it's a disparate situation. There's no mechanical lift, there's no ramp for these children to access this stage. That is a challenge. These are our original boiler and electrical systems. These have definitely outlived their shelf life. They break down frequently. There is steam, which creates the exhaust of the accumulation and condensation that was shown in the earlier slide. The parts are antiquated, very challenging to order, very expensive. They're just beyond their shelf life. I can say that we have experienced breakdowns very recently at Cushing that did impact the learning climate and environment for our students. On the right, fuse boxes, electrical switches, again, outdated, expensive, and just not up to code. My earlier slide, which showed the rubber roof, this is an example of roof damage due to condensation and pooling on that roof. And this will lead to overall damage and create some challenges with our roof integrity. So one clearly correlates to the other. On the right, we have instructional technologies in our classrooms. We have interactive smart boards. We have Ladybug document cameras. These are state-of-the-art technology tools that we all use today in public schools. We don't have adequate power. We don't have adequate wattage. We really need to use these power strips, which can become potentially dangerous and really not optimal for our students to get that full experience using our instructional technologies. I will also add that these are not cheap. So thank you. The next slide shows on the left, this is the art room at Hatherly Elementary School. This is our art experiences for our students is very kinesthetic, it's very hands-on. They are building, they are sculpting, they are drawing, they are illustrating. And so it's a very physical engagement process. This is a very undersized room for our students. The Hatherly art teacher has done a great job trying to accommodate for storage, but again, it impacts the learning environment because they don't have adequate storage. On the right, Tom mentioned earlier, these schools in the 60s were not designed with student needs in mind. Hatherly School has made, based on student need, out of a mechanical room, an OT-PT room. So some of our children receive occupational therapy and fine motor skill development, physical therapy. They need those skills to develop in order to develop themselves. This is not a great environment to achieve that goal because it's very noisy in a mechanical room. It's just not, this is a reaction to a need. And then the last slide that I'll speak to, this is the Cushing Library. The heart of every elementary school is the library. We want to develop the love and joy of reading for our children, to develop and expand their reading skills and their literacy skills. This is in the center of our school. High traffic areas, there are classrooms off of this library. Limited, no natural light, and energy conservation is also of a concern. So it really is not the best place to develop that love of reading for our children. And that is the foundation of their public school experience, K-12. And the last picture here, this is at Cushing. We have our WIN block models. That acronym stands for what individuals need. We conduct small group instruction for our students, interventions in math and reading and writing. We don't have adequate, Tom mentioned this, we don't have adequate meeting spaces in our schools. We had to get these cubicles, which do the job, but there's very lack of privacy. There's also strong traffic. So again, it's not a real long-term solution. Thank you.
Boss, any questions at this point? Yes, sir.
I have some experience in construction and things like that, and I don't mean to offend anybody here, because I know you inherited your problems. I worked for a municipality as well for 30 years. Been retired for 20, so I've been away from it. But I'm horrified by what I see, and you probably were too. And so I think we need to apologize for that. But on the other hand, as we used to say when I worked, fix it. It's not going to heal. Okay, there were windows there that have just been ignored. And you know, I know you have a budget. I know that you inherited the budget, you inherited the program, and this can't go on like this. We need sustainability here, and we need a commitment. If you're going to do something like this, to maintain it, and have a budget for it, and train people. And even something that you think is as complicated as a roof. I used to work for a company that did roofs, composite roofs. That's easily fixable, believe it or not. Easily fixable. You got to rip the roof off, yes, but then you put tapered foam on it, and you put a membrane roof on it, and it has to be maintained. So I think you've done a lot of great work here, but you need to address some of these issues, because I think when you go to town meeting, you're going to have some problems if you don't address those things now. But you budget, and you have the people that can execute the work to maintain it. The same is true with everything there that I saw in those photographs. So, just saying. I wanted also to know, are there any downsides to having one school versus two schools, and what are the advantages as well?
Well, I think like you saw tonight, the advantages certainly would be the modern learning experiences, and we're going to get into those next, I think, after this. So we'll talk in detail about, you know, what's a modern student and teacher need to learn, as far as the one-size-fits-all box kind of involved in. Also, the accessibility has been mentioned a lot. It's more than students and children in wheelchairs. It's anybody visiting the building that might be disabled, it's guests, it's other students. So I think that also applies to learning. I think that's important in a new building. I think the consolidation of this was an opportunity. I think it's very unique. You could certainly do great by fixing two buildings, having two. I think why this was important is because you get one new school and you address take two buildings offline that are obviously in rough shape that needed to be done. So I think that was the all this 6 years of research and study came to that.
One more question. I've got a bunch of them. But one more that I think is something really good to really consider, and that is, somebody said something about a safe space. Now, is that a place of refuge? Because if it isn't, we need to consider that, as well as sprinkler systems and all these safety systems that need to be designed into it. 400 and, is it 460?
Correct.
Okay, 460 is a lot of people, no matter what size they are. And they need a place of refuge when the unthinkable things happen. Okay?
Agreed.
Is that something that's designed in?
100%. We'll get to that in the details of the act. One example, we talked about the courtyards. When we went out and looked at other schools, that's something we thought was really great, visionary, and safe, right? So for our younger kids, and the older kids, but specifically in this example, one of the courtyards we have two, the younger kids, they're by age, there's an opportunity for those kids to go and learn, also to play safe. You saw there's parking lots and things outside. Those young kids are, need to be managed and watched closely. That's just one example of a safe space to play, to learn, inside the walls of the school, but outside. That's one example of many that we'll talk about tonight. You're 100% right.
More specifically, I'm looking for a genuine place of refuge for them to be safe and well protected until something can be mitigated.
Right. I think we'll give an example too on, we talked about community spaces. There's an opportunity, for example, where the building can be locked down on the classroom wings while the main corridors stay locked down, safe and visible. Cameras, multiple cameras in the new buildings, things like that. So we'll touch on that, but that's some real examples that have been looked at.
Each classroom is set up to be a place of refuge also. So whether you're in a classroom, or you're in a gymnasium, or a library within the space, it could be considered an area of refuge. And the building actually is being divided into thirds. So you can, if a lockdown situation were to occur, the building would automatically close those doors and lock them from the pull side on the door. So if someone was in one section of the building, they could not get into one of the other two sections of the building. And there's a whole security protocol to get into the building. If you're someone coming to visit, where you start in a locked area before you're welcomed into the building.
So I want to go back to your first, sorry, Jim. That's right, I'm going to take that to this slide, so I'll take your question.
I was going to ask you about class size. You said that you want to have 20 students per classroom, which I think is a very good number for elementary. But I'm wondering, what is the average class size now?
About 18 or 19.
Oh, it's about the same.
Correct.
Okay.
Yeah.
Because I was thinking if it was larger, did you take that into account as far as the budget? But it's about the same.
It's about the same, and it's unique and actually a point of pride for the school committee and for our leadership team and the community. When we did surveys when I took over superintendent, it was a real big important point from the community and the parents was we want small class sizes, especially in elementary.
Right.
It makes a lot of sense. So we've committed to that. We've got to that in 20 every year.
Thank you.
Thank you. So back to your question. When I got here 4 years ago, I think something similar about the taking care of your buildings, being responsible, being good stewards of the taxpayers' money. The select board said that to me. It said, we know you inherited, but you need to take care of it. So I wanted to share this slide because this is my third building project in my 30 years in education. And I think all of them, very different, but all had something very in common is they're expensive, they use taxpayers' hard-earned money, and you have to build trust in people to vote for this. And say, why are we going to spend all that money for you? You're a guy, you're from my time, you've been here 4 years. I inherited this, that we showed you this in 2017, this was going on. Certainly I support it, I think it's needed. But I wanted to show you in collaboration with the school committee, and a lot of other people I'll talk about in a minute, I think we've done that over the last 4 years, built trust. And I want to share some of those things that we've done. And we've done it in collaboration with the select board, the town administrator, finance directors here, a lot of meetings and work there, the capital planning committee, and all of you as community members who have voted for our capital projects over the last 4 years. So over the last 4 years, these are all the things, and there's more. I just wanted to highlight $6.5 million over the last 4 years, because I think actions speak louder than words. So what have we done to maintain our buildings in the school system? What have we done to show you, the community members, that we can earn your trust, and we'll take care of this new building? Not only will we do that, we're not gonna come back in the next 5 to 10 years and ask for another building. Okay? So this is what we're gonna do, and what we've proven that. So, for example, identified buildings. So Wampatuck is actually the oldest building in the district, but it's got, when they did the studies, it said it's got good bones and it can be improved. And so what we've done is we've put a lot of money into Wampatuck. So new floors, new library floor, a new parking lot, portico if you drive by there. So this is some of the things that are going on right now. And then what do we got in for this year for the?
Wampatuck to make ADA compliance for a lot of these.
All the bathrooms, ADA compliant. So we're actually improving Wampatuck. It's not getting worse. Okay, so Jenkins is another example. We talked about roofs. We put 2 roofs up this summer. We put one on high school and we put on Jenkins. All right. So that was done through the capital. And the playground was a good story. That's a collaborative approach that the CPC did in partnership with Jenkins PTO. So they got together and paid for that. And within 1 year, we had a new playground at Jenkins for kids enjoy. Last year, before that was built, every time something broke, what did we do to fix it? We ripped it out of the ground and they had less stuff. Okay, so we got a new playground the kids enjoy. Again, I'm not going to go through all of these. Situate High School, another older building, bigger building, right? Crown jewel of the town. Roof repair this summer for $650,000. HVAC units, okay? And some of the stuff that's not on here, we spent a lot of money in our EST money from the federal government on all our HVACs and all the buildings, so that our air quality is top notch, even in the older buildings. So, and lastly, what I want to mention that's not up in here is something unique to our district that we've incorporated 4 years ago, is a $250,000 maintenance line item in our operational budget. There are not many schools, I don't know any other school that has that. $250,000 every year, just the way you said. So we get a broken window now, it's not wait 10 years and go to Capitol and get a whole new, floor of windows. We fix that window. So I want to reassure you, sir, that that's being done within our operational budget. We spend it every year, and I think we're actually increasing it to potentially $300,000 next year. So then we're going to come back to the town and brag about all the things we're doing to enhance the property and take ownership in that. So I'll take any questions on that or the process. And one last thing, I'm sorry. If we don't build a new school, all our capital money is going to have to go, obviously, what you saw tonight, to those 2 buildings. And my concern about that is then the Situate High School and the Wampatuck start falling apart. We don't have the money directed to them, and then we'll be back here asking for another Wampatuck. So I think we're in great shape right now with the other 4 schools and maintaining them and keeping them up for several years, actually improving them with the town's help, with the school committee's direction. And I think with this new school, we won't be coming back in a long time for your support. So thank you.
So just the first discussion about cost, and then I'll be back later to talk about the project cost, but kind of to go off of what the superintendent just said. If we were to take everything in Cushing and Hatherly and put it on that prior slide, that's the $62 million that they're talking about when you saw in the video, right? To fix everything in both of these buildings. The reality though, that's if you could move all the kids out of it today. Move them out today, put them in modulars out front. If you could even fit them, fit all of those students on site in modulars. That's where the 62 comes from. The reality though is if the town were to undertake that sort of a project, you probably would break it up. Let's say you broke it up over $10 million a year. Well, you spend that first 10, then the remaining 50 goes up 5%. Then you spend the next 10, and the remaining 40 goes up 5%. So the reality is that over a period of time, if you were just to repair those buildings in their entirety, certain things like the HVAC system, can't be in it when you're doing the HVAC system. Can't be in it if you're rewiring the whole building, because all the ceilings have to come down and all of that work. So I think that just the highlights of this is the MSBA, as John said, requires it to be in your list of comparisons as kind of a baseline. To say if you were just to fix it all right now, kind of forgetting a little bit about the practicality of what it would take to actually get all of that done. Again, it would require additional modular space. It would be really disruptive because you'd be moving kids in and out. The important, I think the next to last bullet's the most important, is MSBA reimbursement is unlikely. Well, MSBA doesn't like us if we say it wouldn't be reimbursed, but as soon as you ask the question, do those renovations help the school meet its educational needs? Well, the answer is no, because it doesn't get any better. So that, therefore, it wouldn't be reimbursed. So again, that would be all on the town. And then I think, again, the most important point is that these things that have been, the district has held off on, if you look back on the prior slide, there was only one item of cost that was spent on Cushing and Hatherly over those 4 years. It's smoke detectors for about 50 grand. Again, not talking about basic maintenance and upgrade that Chris and his team deal with all the time, but really from a capital standpoint, the town's been really careful not to spend money that you potentially would be tearing down later. So really have just done the bare minimum of required work for now.
So we wanted to take a few moments just to share with you some of the educational features that are in this project that will help us to improve our student experience and achieve our goals that are laid out in our strategic plan. So the visioning for this project began almost a year ago now through a series of visioning workshops and through our district's strategic planning process. And from the very beginning, we wanted to make sure that this project embodied these 5 principles. So the first is purposeful innovation. And these are innovations that are grounded in our programs, services, and practices. They're not bells and whistles. They are based on research and considered to be best practices in the educational field. Universal Design for Learning is an educational framework that recognizes that all students learn differently. This framework has guided the development of a wide variety of instructional spaces that our current buildings just do not have. We've always wanted this project to be a big part of our community. So there are features built into this project that allow the larger community to use the building and its site outside of normal school hours. We also feel strongly that learning can and should take place outside of the traditional classroom. So this project has many features that make that connection between the indoors and the outdoors in a very intentional way. And finally, safety. So safety is always at the forefront of everything that we do. And from the beginning, we've insisted that this building have features that make the building and its site safe and welcoming. So in short, this project possesses the features necessary to provide an excellent educational experience for the next 60 years and beyond. A lot more is known about the learning process now than when these 2 buildings were built. So Situate's commitment to universal design for learning recognizes that each student has a unique set of needs. Having only a classroom environment limits our ability to meet those needs. So this project provides a wide variety of flexible instructional spaces. Educators will have access not only to their classrooms, but to extended learning areas, small group areas, and outdoor learning areas to help meet our students' needs. Each classroom that you see here has direct access to an extended learning area. These areas can be used for one-to-one supports, small group work, or just helping to increase our students' independence. Other purposeful innovations that you see here were used to maximize storage creatively. So if you notice just outside that classroom door, you have your student cubbies, and up above those cubbies are locked teacher storage. Moving that storage to outside the classroom really helps us to maximize the storage capacity within the classroom. One of the key features to this project is the inclusion of 2 enclosed courtyards, each tuned to the developmental needs of the students that it serves. What you see here is the courtyard in the southern part of the building that serves our pre-K through grade 2 students. This courtyard does have a pre-K playground because it is important for our youngest students to be able to have a safe and secure area to play. But it is also large enough to accommodate other learning activities. If you notice in the diagram, there are not classrooms located directly adjacent to that courtyard. The extended learning area is located there and benefits from the natural light coming in through the windows. But there are also 3 spaces, the OTPT space, the art room, and the music room, that were purposely placed there with input from our district teachers to allow those classrooms to spill out into the courtyard when appropriate. There's also a second courtyard in the northern part of the building that will serve our 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade students. Another key concept in this design is this idea of learning on display. The library is a perfect example of that, and that's what you're looking at here. It is prominently located at the front of the building, right next to the front door and the main office, but also adjacent to a main gallery corridor that runs between the gym and the art and music classes, so that anyone who visits this building immediately knows that this is a place of student learning. One of the key deficiencies that was mentioned earlier in our existing buildings relates to spaces for special education and related service providers. This project represents an opportunity for purpose-built spaces to help us maximize inclusionary practices, reduce stigma, and meet the needs of our most vulnerable students in a way that our buildings cannot do today. If you look in the diagram there, all of those spaces in the pink, purple color are the special education spaces and related service areas like OTPT and speech. These are located strategically so that they are among their grade level peers to maximize those inclusionary opportunities. Our primary learning center, intermediate learning center, and our GEMS program will all benefit from being housed in classrooms that have features that support their unique needs.
I'll just add, we actually just received our approval from the Department of Elementary and Secondary Education today for this plan, for the special education plan. And they review that normally on each project, so that was a great milestone.
This is a rendering of the cafeteria. The cafeteria is just a beautiful space that is awash in soft northern light through those windows with a view out into that 3rd, 4th, and 5th grade courtyard. That courtyard has opportunities to have outdoor dining, raised planter beds for science education, as well as other learning opportunities within that courtyard. And one of the most important things about these 2 courtyards is that they are flexible and intellectually engaging for our students. In addition to the courtyards, there are other site features that help to support our students' needs and development. This is an overview of the site, which was designed really to strengthen those outdoor connections, but also be safe for our students at the same time, by eliminating any type of that student vehicle conflict when you're approaching or exiting the building to the site. In this image highlights in red the age-appropriate playgrounds that exist in this new plan that are conveniently located to be used during the day as well as by the community after school hours. In this image in blue, it shows the traffic flow. So the larger loop on the right-hand side is your main car drop-off and pickup. And this allows students to be dropped off right at the door and not have to cross any vehicle lane to get into the building. On the left-hand side is the dedicated pre-K space. Yes?
This is a great image. I'm just wondering if there's any concern or what your thoughts are on having the play areas so embedded really in the parking area.
I think it,
that, you know, balls
Yeah.
can go and, I mean, I always feel.
honestly, it comes
Sure,
down
so-
to, we really only have traffic 2 times a day. So they come in the morning, no one's gonna be using the playground.
Well, it's fenced.
And then in the afternoon would be the same situation.
It's fenced, right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah, there are fences all around it.
Ah, that's interesting.
Oh, the pre-K parking lot is a dedicated parking lot for our youngest students so that parents and caregivers can exit the car, escort them into the building, again, not crossing any vehicle lanes to do that. This image highlights the location of the new Flannery Field in yellow on the right-hand side. It is in close proximity to the building and to our gymnasium so that our PE classes can go out and use the field in fair weather, also not having to cross any vehicle lanes to do so.
Yeah, so this image here actually is kind of a ground level view of that same playground we were just looking at, and you can see the fence here. It's kind of been ghosted so that it doesn't take over the image visually, but it is there, and this would be a very strong fence, you know, realizing that it is close to the parking area. But what's really important about the design of the building is that it enhances these community connections. The materials that were chosen for the outside of the building are reflective of some of the materials that you see around the coastline of Situate. You know, the brick recalls the pebbles that you see on the beach. The forms of the building recall kind of the beach dunes and those sorts of things. So we have those kind of references in the project. It represents and recognizes that seaside aesthetic. And then, as Christine said, you have public access to all of these outside spaces on the outside of the building. Jumping back to that discussion of building security, you have a welcoming entrance. It's a very glassy entrance, but it's also designed as kind of a sally port, which is it's a security term, which basically means one door doesn't open until the other one closes. If someone is visiting the school, they come first to the outside door and they speak on an intercom. They're recognized by the folks that are inside. They're led into the vestibule, but not into the building yet. They're, again, visually recognized, businesses, verify, then they're let in, then they sign their name, they get a badge, and if someone is needing to escort them, the escort comes up to the office and meets them. And it's only then that they're let into the school proper. Once they get in, and you can see this from the outside of the building, there's a very nice lobby and gallery space that are presented to you. And this area is really designed as a welcoming area for parents and families, a family reception area where they can meet their students if they're meeting up for a midday appointment or something like that, or waiting for somebody. So it's really kind of designed into the front entrance. There's a couple of other areas where folks can go, which will have some furniture arrangements for relaxing in that front space. Back to that idea of security, Don was talking about this earlier. The building is designed into three distinct blocks, and there are four kind of entry points here into those blocks. The two gray areas are the private academic areas where all the classrooms are. And the center part is the public area where all the core spaces are, the more public spaces that can also be used by the community in the evening. So for evening use, the wings can be locked off, so people can't be wandering around the school. They can only get into and use the spaces in the center of the building. If there was a crisis event, these doors would actually be on hold opens, magnetic hold opens that would actually let go, and the doors would automatically close and lock. So you're able to compartmentalize an issue into one part of the building. They can't get to other parts of the building. But there's exits in the other parts where if kids need to be evacuated quickly, they can get out. So that's sort of a big level, high level security concept for the building. Moving to the construction safety, we talk about safety, it's very, very important. And it really goes down to every detail of how the building is going to be built on the site. This diagram shows in orange the new building footprint, and in green the existing building footprint. Yes, they're very close together. There's going to be a fence surrounding the entire site, the entire building site. It'll be armored in places where there's, close contact potentially with vehicles. We've really tried to reorient the pedestrian circulation so the kids are away from the fence as much as possible. We've separated the construction entrance as much as we can. It's a pretty narrow frontage there on Ann Vinyl Road, but the existing entrance would stay as it is. New construction entrance would be over here. There's a little bit of parking on the site, and we're working on a parking plan so that we don't have contractors parking in the neighborhood. That we understand that that's an issue, and we will endeavor to make that not happen. And then temporary facilities, we provided some areas for play in the front of the school, which actually originally was designed as a play area to make up for some of the play space that we're losing in the back to the construction. And then kind of going forward here, coming back to the gentleman's comment about durability and longevity, we design these buildings to last at least 50 years, if not 60. The materials that we select are very durable. They're costly. Buildings cost a lot, but they're made to last, and that's really a part of the sustainability of the building in terms of its cost. We also really try to eliminate unnecessary cost by designing efficiently and with good detail. The building is going to be a green building. We have a target of, it's going to be using the LEED, it's the U.S. Green Building Council LEED certification system. We have a silver target, there's 4 levels. We're targeting the silver level, but we're also, as a kind of stretch goal, we have the gold level in mind, and we have a pathway to meet that. Because the building is green, we are going to be able to get an extra 4% reimbursement from the MSBA. That's figured into the financing that we've got going here. And finally, this is a new slide, just came over. Part of the green building system on the building is going to be a solar photovoltaic array. The blue area is the area that we are required to do by the energy code, and then we have room for more panels on the roof if we need to. So that's great to know that is going to fit on the roof. I've also got a couple new slides in here talking about stormwater planning. We've had some questions, mainly from the abutters, and understandably so, about stormwater and how that's going to work on the site. The main concept that stormwater design encapsulates is really this graph right here. The red curve represents what happens when you don't do anything on the site. Water hits the site, it all comes together at one point. You have a very quick sort of maximum flow that happens. When you do things to temper that flow, you're basically flattening out that curve. Where have we heard that before? So you're really trying to design to what the channel capacity is, what the capacity of the stormwater system is downstream from your project, to make sure that you're not flooding everything, and you do that by spreading out the water. So these are 2 very simplified diagrams that show kind of what I was just talking about. This upper diagram, imagine this is a section cut through the site. So you kind of slice the site and you're looking at it sideways. Here's the slope, the rain comes down, it all kind of pools on the site and starts running right into the wetland. And that's kind of the undeveloped condition. A little bit of it soaks into the ground and recharges into the water table. The developed condition down here, we have designed into the site plan all of these different kinds of devices to handle the stormwater. Chambers that are actually buried underground, where the water just goes right to those chambers and then is slowly released back into the groundwater rather than running down the hill. We've got rain gardens, which are actually very nice to look at, in addition to being rain treatment devices. Bioretention basins, which are a different type of, they're basically like a dry pond, if you will, that will fill up with a lot of rainwater if you have it fast. And then we have these swales and weirs. And I've got some pictures that show some of these things. So the underground chamber, it's basically just a big It's nothing more than a big hole in the ground that's made up of these blue, sometimes they're yellow, little half domes, and they're in rows, and it's surrounded by a bunch of gravel, and there's all this space in there where the water can go. So the stormwater is designed to go to that space, and it's held there, and then it recharges into the ground. This is that bioretention basin I was talking about, basically right next to the parking lot of the schools that we designed. Water runs in there. It initially will soak down into the ground. If the water is coming too fast, it will actually hold that water like a bathtub. When it reaches the top of these outlets, it will actually run into the outlets and it'll go into the street. But it's delayed doing that, and that's the whole idea, is to spread it out over time. This is actually the detention basin right next door to the school in Carriage House Way. Similar idea, not as fancy than this one over here, doesn't have all the plants, but it's the same idea. The drain, the outlet is actually up higher, so it allows the water to just accumulate in that pool, and the soils at the bottom of this pool are designed to actually let the water go in quickly. This is a site plan that shows kind of a diagram of how we've got the stormwater split up on site. We basically have 3 design points, or 3 areas where the water is going to go. There's a wetland in the north, a wetland in the south, and the street system. And you can see it's roughly broken up into thirds, but the most capacity is going to the street because that's the system that has the most ability to take the stormwater. And again, it's really important to note that the water is going very slowly, and it's not going to be overrunning these systems except in very large storms. So that's what I've got on stormwater. Now I'm going to hand it off to John to talk about the most wonderful crashing waves.
It's not a tidal wave, it's no pad, it's a small wave. Just a little bit about cost. We're going to talk about a few different reference points. You know, obviously with public work, everything is expensive right now. Everything with construction has just gone through the roof, obviously, through COVID, supply chain, all those great buzzwords. You know, Tom's flapping the curve analogy, pretty appropriate. But the reality is this work has to be bid under Massachusetts prevailing wage laws. Okay? You know, yes, somebody might be able to do something for you cheaper on your home. Absolutely. Not in Massachusetts. Massachusetts has these great laws. They set the rates. Those rates for the wages only go up. You know, electrician is something over $100 an hour. Plumbers are pretty close to that. You know, for every trade, there is a prevailing wage that goes up every 6 to 12 months moving forward. So these costs reflect that. The costs also reflect not the price to do it today, but to do it a year from now when it's bid, and then to carry the cost of the escalation about halfway through construction. So if we're talking about a 2-year build, we're carrying escalation in these numbers to within a year, a year after the job has started. So when we talk about construction budgets, we're trying not to give you the number on bid day, because if we try to give you the number on bid day right now, and bids come in a little bit higher, we're over budget, okay? The cost estimates that we're getting, we're trying to target the middle of the pack. If we get 7 bids, we're trying to give you the bid of the 4th place person, so right in the middle of that pack. Superintendent said earlier, or I think the video said, I don't know if what the superintendent said. The video said, you know, $120.1 million was the project budget at the preferred schematic report. That was the prior submission that we did. And that really was just for construction and soft costs. It didn't include some of these other items. And the superintendent was really clear. And if you look at this first column, you know, the project budget, that $120 million, district wanted to make sure that it carried the cost of the feasibility study, the $1 million that you've already spent. They wanted to make sure, after talking to the town, that we carried the cost for the Cushing demo and abatement, so that we wouldn't leave the town with an empty building, okay? And then also wanted to carry some money for the AN vinyl force main. That's where you pull into the site in Hatherly, the pipe that takes the nasties up the hill to the gravity, the rest of the gravity sewer system, okay, so that we can do that. So when we got our cost estimates back, you have to picture, when we did the preferred schematic report, very high level, just very diagrammatic, really using some of the very drawings that Tom has showed you, in this presentation. When we did the schematic design, that's a set of 40 or so drawings, some actual baseline specifications. It's really the first 25 to 30% of the actual design of this building that we're talking about. When all those things came back, numbers were high. So for folks that don't think we're thinking about cost, what you see in this second column under the deducted is a series of items that the superintendent, was very clear. 120 has to be the max number. And I want you to carry all of those three items I talked about in the number as well. So we basically had to go through, a value management process where, again, even at this very early stage of the design team, picked up their pencils and really tried to figure out what can we do to this design as it stands right now. So what you see here are 6 categories of kind of savings out of the gate to get us back under that $120 million number. So the first big one is site, and that was taken care of by saying, you know what, we're going to make some grading changes to be able to take less material off site than it was originally put in the plans. We're also going to carry Flannery Field as a grass field. At the preferred schematic report, it was carried as a synthetic turf field. We said, not now, maybe later. That train hasn't entirely left the station, but we can talk about that as the design progresses. Structure, there were some changes made to the roof. The roof originally had a full walk-up exit onto the roof surface. After talking to Kevin Kelly and his staff, he said, no, simplify that. We can do that with just a normal type of collapsible ladder inside the building. And we're also going to simplify the entry. You saw that beautiful front entry with the cantilevered roof. Well, that roof doesn't reflect some of the changes that were made to make it a little less thick and stick out a little less far, to the tune of saving $1 million. The envelope, that's the skin of the building, a really expensive component of the building. We said, wait a minute, too much glass. Let's take away some of the glass. Let's do a little bit more brick. Take away some parapets that were at the top of those 2 courtyards that you saw, $2 million savings. I think the last big savings was the MEP, the mechanical, electrical, plumbing systems. In the preferred schematic, the thought was, let's carry the money to do geothermal, to put geothermal wells in the school. And at the end of the day, the cost just coming in too high by carrying a dual fuel system, basically saying there is a gas boiler, but also the building is electric ready, so that with the PV, photovoltaics that Tom showed, those things together, even including those costs, saved us $2.5 million off of the mechanical systems. Further reductions in the soft costs got us to the $119.4 million budget. Next slide, please. Just a quick comparison of that PSR. I was rolling, Tom.
Yeah.
No problem. So just so folks understand, when we were on the left side of the page here, that's the old, that's the report that the video talked about at the 120.1. We had a rudimentary, roughly speaking, construction budget, and then we as the project team just carried 30% for soft costs. For everything else, construction numbers, again, got a rough estimate, but soft costs, well, what are those? That is everything else you need for the project. Those include your architect, Tom and Don, your OPM standing here, all your contingency monies for just in case. Everything that if you picked up the building and shook it would fall out of it. Every chair, every table, every computer, all of those items were encompassed in that 30%. So that's where we were at the 120. As opposed to, on the right side of the page, we now have 2 cost estimates, one done by Tom's firm, one done by our cost consultant. Those 2 folks sat at a table, talked about the number and reconciled it, and said, yeah, your number's decent, yeah, your number's decent. We're both seeing things the same way. And then we went through the rest of the budget and actually itemized all of those soft costs. So as you can see on the prior page where it said we were able to have a soft cost reduction, we were able to do a couple of things. So even though costs went up, soft costs went down for a total, and again, that includes all of those other items, from the prior page. It includes the Cushing demo. It includes the original feasibility study at $1 million. All those things added in puts us back at the 119.4. So we talked about grant. The grant, that's the big number from the MSBA. So as Tom alluded to, we had our call with the MSBA last week. That 35,814,280 is our official number. And 30%, that's the round number. And you say, well, wait a minute, I've heard our reimbursement rate is higher. Well, the way the MSBA works is they set your reimbursement rate. Okay, it's a certain percentage, and basically, right here, Situate's reimbursement rate is 47.72% of eligible costs. Okay, and the best way I can convey to you eligible costs is they will pay 47% of up to $605 per square foot. Every dollar over $605 per square foot is zero. So as an example, let's say the construction costs for this school were $905. It makes the math easier. They're not, they're less than that. But they'll pay 47.7% of that first $605 per square foot, and then zero of that additional $300 from $605 to $905. So that's how you can see that 47 becomes a number of roughly 30 when you take into account that's their cost per square foot cap. They have a $1,200 per student cap on furniture, a $1,200 square foot cap per student cap on technology. So they have a series of items, and the net effect of all of those things means your 47.7% grant on eligible costs is really about 30% of everything at the end of the day. So basically, at the end of this process, we've got a $119.4 million project budget that was submitted to MSBA. They've confirmed at this point that $35.8 million will be the grant that will be officially talked about at that meeting on the 24th of April. And that leaves the town share of $83,620,663. Next slide. So then we gave those numbers to Nancy. And you say, wait a minute, John, you just said that that was $83,620,663. Yes, because you as a town already voted and paid for the $1.1 million in feasibility money. So you don't have to worry about that. That's off the table. So you're down to $82,520,663 as the town share. Again, as the video said, for the median home in Situate, $921,000. That $520 impact to every home is $866 for the first year, $414 for the 25th year, meaning for that $921,000 home, the estimated impact over the 25-year period is a few dollars under $16,000. Again, like everything, there are assumptions being made for a calculation like this. Again, the median home price in Situate changes every year. This is based on a 25-year bond using a level principal repayment and a conservative 4.75% interest rate. Next slide. As you can see, this is the time when everyone takes out their phone and takes a picture. Because the biggest impact to a taxpayer is really the borrowing rate. Okay, if we were to borrow today, that rate would be somewhere between 3.75% and 4%. So not the 866 a household, somewhere between 767 and 791. But like everything, we would rather be a little conservative, more conservative when conveying numbers and end up better off at the end of the day. So what happens next? A yes vote is really easy. That timeline that Don showed you at the beginning continues. With a yes vote at town meeting and at the ballot, the project continues on down its path. We do design for about another 13 months. We do a couple of months of bidding, and we kick off construction in roughly the later summer 2025, with kids moving into the school and starting school 2 years later in September of 27. What happens with a no vote? So what's really important for folks to understand is at this MSBA board meeting on the 24th, they are voting on your project scope and budget. They are voting for a combined Hatherly and Cushing with 460 students and 100 students of pre-K for $119.4 million in a grant, as I showed you up there. People will talk about, well, the MSBA has a failed vote policy. They do. They have a failed vote policy because after the board votes on the 24th, the town of Situate has 120 days to prove to them that you're going to support the project. And in this case, it's with a town meeting affirmative vote and a ballot affirmative vote. If either of those fails, they give you the opportunity through that failed vote policy to figure out how you're going to get those extra votes. It just gets you more time. There is no plan B. There is no changing this project on the town meeting floor. The project is 560 students, 119.4 million. Any no to this process or change to the process means you're getting out of the line because the MSBA will have voted by that point on this project. The submission is in, and as Tom or Don said, by the time you get to the 24th, it is kind of perfunctory. You know, they've already asked us the questions they have. We will get some additional comments, but those comments are meant more for the design after an affirmative vote. They'll want us, you know, they make some suggestions about what to do in the next phase of design. Again, that's moot if the project gets voted down. But it's really important to know that if it's no, you know, that long timeline starts over if you want to be reconsidered by the MSBA. There's no real going back except for submitting a new statement of interest and starting that 4 or 5 year process all over again, assuming that you get an immediate invitation back in. And also, a no vote means that, you know, the things that Superintendent Burke had said, you know, we haven't been spending money on as part of that $6.5 million. Suddenly now, okay, we've just done smoke detectors. All right, now we've got some real needs that, you know, we could have staved off for another couple of years of construction. But now we've got to get those things back, you know, back on the you know, the overall plan with the other schools.
Obviously, questions on that, right? But, yeah. So, thank you so much for coming out to me, first of all, and being very patient. There's a lot of information to go through there. The important dates that are coming up are part of my steps. We mentioned the MSBA board meeting on the 24th, special town meeting on the 29th, the debt exclusion election, all-day election on the 18th. Both take place in the high school gym. And don't forget, there's also regular town meeting on April 8th. And then all this information that you saw tonight in the whole process that we've gone through with the SBC and the town is located on the Situate Schools website, as was pointed out in the video. Go to the home page, and it's down in the lower left, I think, you find that icon, and click on it. You can also find it on the town's website, situatema.gov. So it's readily available and there's a lot of information. So with that,
We'll open the floor up for questions, comments? Yes.
Thank you so much. I noticed that, looked to me as though a lot of the roofs were actually flat in this building. Is that true?
So they're not flat, but they're not sloped like you see in a house. They are all pitched to drains. So everything has positive pitch to the roof drains. There's redundant drainage too. So if one gets clogged, there's another one close by to absorb any of that overflow that may occur before someone will get up there and need that repair.
My other question, there's a lot of beautiful open spaces. I don't know about anyone else, but sometimes I go to some modern restaurants that are big and open and so loud, you can't hear anything. Is there going to be any noise abatement?
Absolutely. The big spaces that you're talking about are really the cafeteria and the library.
Yeah.
And the gymnasium will have this also. So we'll have acoustical baffles in those spaces. And we actually have a professional acoustician on our team, which will help tune those spaces. So you can have a conversation sitting down in that high space with someone at a table. But at the same time, there's actually a stage between the gym and the cafeteria. So you can also have speakers. You can do drama production, or you can do music, and that'll work well also.
Yeah, so like for example, these panels on the wall, this happens to be on the
Okay.
library, but these, this stuff right here. Yeah.
And or above.
Yes. And, yeah, there's also baffles up in the ceiling. We have the same kind of baffling system in the cafeteria.
And what is the material, it's not brick, it's not glass, but it's something else that looks sort of,
It's a metal panel system.
okay.
So, and we found a material that's extremely durable. Some of the older metal panel systems, you throw a wall at the desk, or you put it up because it's long lines, so it looks like it's oil, it's called oil canning. This is a very rigid material that, nothing's indestructible. We had a hard time trying to damage it, to be honest.
I just want to say a couple of things. My kids went to the high school that graduated 42 and 40 years ago, so I was a little embarrassed. A couple of things. Number one, the greatest resource we have in this country, in this city, town, is our kids. We want them with everything they're facing in the future. Look at this AI situation. We want to give, we have to give them the best opportunity of success. So when they go out into the world, they're going to be good citizens. The other thing is, we're all going to get older. And if we don't support the kids now, are they going to support us when we need help 20 or 30 years from now? That's one thing. Second thing is, it was talking about, well, what happens if there's a no vote? If there's a no vote, we're going to the end of the line. We're not talking 5 years, we're talking maybe 10 years. You take $100 and you add 5% to it every year for 10 years. That's $170. So this project at $100 million, even if we do get back in, it's going to be, hell, it might even be $200 million after that. The final thing is towns, and we know the South Shore towns who are known as good school towns. We want to be a good school town. People want to move in. I mentioned at another meeting about, I was at a surrounding town for many years. People moved into that town because of the school system. They paid the money because they knew they were getting a good school system and their kids were going to thrive. And two of them came up to me and said, you know, Mr. Marshman, you're absolutely right about that. And we got finished with that, we moved to Situate. Now, I took that, what, we moved to Situate because we're shitty? No, we moved to Situate because they had done their obligation to their kids. That's important. And, you know, keep that in mind. And hopefully spread that to the people who are, you know, maybe thinking, maybe not. Thank you.
Sir, this is beyond the nano level. This is at the pico level, okay? And I apologize for that, but I do want to make some observations, and that is, you need to have a qualified, experienced clerk of the works, at least one. All right, you should include that. And also, I think another good investment in this is very inexpensive, is have an industrial hygienist take a look at this.
We have
Okay.
both.
You have them?
Yes, we do.
Good for you. That's a great thing to hear.
Our firm will actually be providing the full-time construction site manager who will have their master construction supervisor's license, so they're, you know, with an approval there 40 hours a week. Or MSBA basically says, if the contractor's on site, you're on site. So if it's Saturdays, whenever there's work, there will be someone there. Don's firm will visit the site weekly. I mean, Don lives in town, so I would expect to get a little bit more than weekly out of him as well. But
I've seen what happens when you
industrial
don't
hygiene.
have an experienced, qualified.
The other thing, just so you're aware, the MSBA, because of the amount of these investments, provides for the town at no real additional cost, commissioning agents, third-party commissioning agents that basically review all of the systems of the building, not just mechanical, also the envelope. They will do required pull tests on the roof, infrared scanning at the end, window testing, which of course in a coastal town is really important for, you know, making sure that they don't leak and all of that. So all of that gets built into You know, as I said, we're at 30% design. There's another year to go to design with an approval. All of those things will feed into these project documents. So those 40 sheets will become 150 sheets. The, 100 sheets of specs will become 1,000 sheets of specifications. All of that will be part of it. The commissioning agent they'll have their chance to review and provide feedback on that, as well as, our firm's experience of kind of reviewing the drawings as well along the way.
I just want to kind of reiterate what the importance of what he was saying about maintenance. I think, looking at those pictures, I went to Cushing School, it's chicken, but those repairs weren't done when I was there. Like, nothing's been done since I was there, and it was many, many years ago. So I think for this money to be spent, and it seems like it needs to be done, there has to be some assurance that there's going to be that maintenance ongoing after the project is done.
I think I addressed that a little bit, but I 100% agree with you. We do have a capital plan and other plans that are doing that for current buildings. It'll be the same for the new building. In fact, we didn't see his gates up there, but that's coming online next year. So as early as next year, what was that building? 7 years old. We're already starting to take care of things at gates proactively. So we're 100% in agreement on that. We want to build that trust with the community and say, with this investment, we're going to take care of it. And I think that we're trying to show that with our taking care of all the other buildings that we've done through our actions over the last 4 years.
What is going to happen to that property? Like, I live in that neighborhood. I live in Cushing. So is there going to be a big hole? You're going to knock that down? And what's going to happen with that?
The cost of the project includes the abatement and demolition of that building and the leveling of the site to leave it a flat grass field. Not an irrigated grass field, just the grass field. The parking will stay there for right now. What happens next, that's a town decision.
Yes, sir.
Is there something odd in the shared responsibility of the maintenance of a school building between the inside and outside of the building? Or are you responsible for the grounds as well as the interior of the building?
Typically, the town is responsible for the outside.
So those windows that we saw in the picture, whose responsibility is that?
That will be the school.
It'll be us.
It'll be us.
So it's from the frame of the building out that the town is responsible?
Correct.
And who, I'm sorry, second question, who is reviewing the public safety plan for these buildings, for this building? Specifically, there's a lot of glass. I wish we lived in a different age, but I'm worried about those glass. Is that ballistic? Is that going to be tempered? I mean, how are you doing that, and who's going to be doing the formal reviews?
Yeah, so we've already had some initial meetings with police, fire, and DPW, talking about.
I love them, but they may not be, our town may not be appropriate. I mean, is there,
Yep.
do you go to the state
So-
or the federal and have them review it?
Yeah, so we also have people on staff who are what's called SEPTED certified, so basically security certified. It's not just about systems and window treatments and things of that nature. It's all about how a site and a building works. So your point about ballistic glazing, and there's an intrusion resistant glazing, those will be located in, especially in those vestibule areas, right, in strategic locations. The other thing about your glazing too is you'll find the greatest deterrent to something bad happening in your school is to have eyes outside so someone coming to the building sees that. So that's the building being planned around that principle. Also, Tom mentioned the lockdown areas if somebody were to get into the building. So all that's being reviewed and taken into consideration.
I saw nothing, I know it's a pretty picture, but I saw nothing as bollards placed down the walkway in front of
Oh,
that.
they absolutely
In front of
would,
that
yeah.
parkway.
Right.
You know,
Great
3-foot
that
fence
you
is
picked
not
that out.
gonna do it.
That's, in that, we don't know if they're gonna be metal posts, or they're gonna be big round
Yep.
balls, or they're gonna be rocks from the beach. But yes, something will be there so you can't drive a vehicle into the building, absolutely.
It's a great point because the renderings that they showed,
They're pretty.
but they lighten the fence so that so that you can see the playground, that you don't really see the bollards, but all of those things, we fully realize that it's you're going from look at the curve at the end of the parking lot.
Exactly.
There has to be, you can see them, okay, there is a line of them.
Right.
Fully aware that you have to make that so a car cannot,
Yeah.
get onto that,
Yeah.
onto that flat surface.
Thanks.
I got one more thing. I want, I want to thank you. Did you hear their presentation? The passion they have, the energy they have for the kids, even though they're not working under ideal situations. God, my kids were 8 years old and they were going to your school. These are two excellent people. And it's with people like that and the rest of the school system, you know what? We'll be one of those towns that has a real good school system too.
We didn't pay Mr. Marshall. Paid plan. Well, he was my principal.
Yeah, well,
High school principal. And he was my favorite principal. So he's genuinely in it, so thank you, Mr. Yes.
Speaking of all these safety technologies and plans, are those factored into the repair budget for these schools? Or are we, when we fix Hatherly and Cushing, if this fails, that would mean not including any type of increased security features in the old schools, right?
Nothing like we're talking about here, no.
Yeah.
So we would have to look at how far the town may want to take that.
So it's not included in the
There would
repair
certainly be
budget
locking
right
doors
now.
and security cameras and things like that, but we wouldn't necessarily have the secure vestibules built in there. And of course, we're not in any kind of detail to know for sure how that's going to play out.
Jerry, I'm sorry, thank you.
Thank you. I'd like to remind everybody that the vote on April 29th and the vote on May 18th is for the Cushing Hatherly School. I know that we have other needs in town that capital planning is addressing. Wampatuck School, foreshore protection, sewering North Situate, a new wastewater treatment plant. Do not conflate the issues. The longest journey starts with the first step, and this step is Cushing Hatherly. So please, inform your neighbors of that, and that this is Cushing Hatherly.
I was talking to a Cushing 5th grade teacher who's a father of 4 in Situate, and he reminded me that our current 3rd graders started with virtual kindergarten, and he said the amount of healing we're still doing from COVID and is still happening in the schools, and he just said the idea of a repair-only option that's piecemeal and disruptive made his head hurt. So just keep that into consideration, who the kids are that are currently impacted.
Thank you. I agree.
I feel like it's not fair not to mention what happened in Cushing the past few weeks. I think you said at the last meeting it was $25,000 spent in Cushing in repairs in the last month. Speaking of the 3rd grade class, my daughter, you saw her classroom, it's the trailer out behind Cushing. They exited the building and she came home to tell me how bad it smelled because the sewers backed up into it. We have this school system with these amazing teachers who we're talking about like outside spaces. These teachers are taking their kids out into the parking lot so they can have outside spaces. Like our teachers are already giving them these opportunities, and this is just giving them like a building to do it in that fits, that isn't falling down around them. I have personally gotten poison ivy from Cushing School, the weeds off of the side of the building. And these teachers are putting plastic up for their kids so they can be warm in the winter for these thin windows. I mean, it's not for their lack of trying, that's for sure.
Thank you for bringing it up, because that's a real practical example of current living condition of our kids that are there now, and what may continue, and cost. So that one example, in 1 week, we lost a heating unit, and we had to fix it. The weather was mild enough where we didn't have to cancel school, but there was no heat for intermittent periods of time without it being fixed, and it cost $25,000. Kids are in jackets, we got the day in, but if that was, the winter here is 6 months out of the year. If that was any other day, those kids would have been sent home and had to make it up in June. So that all of that kind of stuff is real and happening. So thank you for bringing that.
You also
real life
messed up their
experience
recess that day. They were
It's
all
one of
very
many.
upset.
Yes, go ahead.
One of the last, maybe like 3 or 4 slides from the end, where you listed all the numbers, I just wanted to tell everyone, like, that is very transparent, and I've been to a lot of meetings, and that slide is very true. Mr. Burkhead he did not want to go over budget, and I commend you for that you said you were not going to go back to the taxpayers of Situate. You're not a resident, but you took that very into consideration. You said, I said 120 million, I am not going over budget to this town, and he didn't. So I commend you on that. The Ann Vinyl Force Main, I had conversations with some of you in email about the sewer. I happen to be in a butter, so I'm familiar with the sewer that when my house was built, it could not be hooked up, and there it is right there. I just want to say how it's been very nice to work with this group of people, because I've asked a lot of tough questions over the past year or two, and things were taking off here to come in under budget, so they've really done a very nice job. So as a fiscal conservative myself, who is a big supporter of this project, I hope that everyone thinks about supporting this.
You have a question?
Yeah, a couple of things. Going back to the slide that you had up with the new school on it, I just wanted to see where the present school is in relation to that building. And if you could say, just in general, how are you going to work around it so that the students aren't too disruptive and are they going to be in contact with the students, and the work is going to be quarried and, that type of thing?
All of the above. So everyone who comes to this site will be quarried. The construction site, you see the red line is completely fenced in, 6-foot high fence along where the building is and where students will be able to view through. It'll be scrimmed, so it'll be a visual barrier also. As Tom mentioned, in the lower left-hand corner, there's a separate construction gate onto the site also. So anyone that needs to do work here will be confined within this particular work area.
Okay. And the current building is the green building?
Oh, yes, so the current building is